Hi, I'm Tamsin. I'm going to show you the mix and match tool on Wikidata and describe for you some of the features, just a quick tour of how to get around it and what it does. So the mix and match tool is about matching external datasets with Wikidata. So one user can upload a catalogue of data and all users can then look through that catalogue and find matches. So this is the front page of Mix and Match. You can find it on ToolForge. I'll put the link in the comments of the YouTube video. And you can find various catalogues here. They're grouped by subject down here. The most recent catalogues up here. Down below is a variety of groupings. You can look for catalogues according to your country or different types, film industry, biographical writers, that kind of stuff. I'm going to be using the Alexander Turnbull catalogue today. We have several of those. The Turnbull Names 2 is the one I'm going to use. And this is a catalogue of identifiers from the Alexander Turnbull Library, which is part of the National Library of New Zealand. It's actually their unpublished data, but it relates to lots of New Zealand people and places and organisations and so on. So it's a very useful data set to have matched up with Wikidata. So when you enter a catalogue for Mix and Match, you'll see all the entries are divided up into categories. So there's fully matched. These are matches that have been confirmed by someone. Preliminarily matched. So the tool has tried to find a match to the Turnbull Library entry in Wikidata, and it thinks it's found one. So these are waiting for someone to come through and check them. There's a category for not applicable. This might contain errors, duplications sometimes, or just things that people have decided are not notable or don't apply to Wikidata for one reason or another. And then there's this much larger category of unmatched items. So Turnbull Names is a database of people, so these are people who do not appear to be in Wikidata yet. And down below you can see the matches over time in this catalogue. So you can see we had a big push on it when it was first uploaded in 2020, and then much smaller numbers of matches since. And down here you can see a kind of a league table of how many matches different users have made. Okay, but let's get into using the tool. So a good place to hang out is the preliminary matched category, because then we can compare matches and decide if they're good or not. But before we get into actually looking at the matches, I just want to show you how to move around the catalogue. So you'll always start off at the first page, but maybe you're looking at places, a catalogue of places, and your country's slap bang in the middle of the alphabet like New Zealand is. I don't want to have to page through 5 pages at a time to get to the part of the catalogue I'm interested in. So bear in mind, you can change the URL up here and go directly to a particular page and get deeper into the catalogue that way, because this is quite a long one and many are in Mix and Match. Okay, but I know I'm going to go back to page 3 because that's the one I've been looking at, and show you how it works from here. So you'll see it takes a few seconds sometimes for some of the data to load. I'll just give that a little while. But what we're looking at here is it's presenting the catalogue entry from the Alexander Turnbull against a Wikidata item that it thinks matches. And that allows us to decide. So the green one, if I was to click on it, let's scroll down to one that I'm interested in. Okay, so here's Terence Graham Price. And the green one is the Alexander Turnbull entry, which doesn't tell us much more than we could already see, but sometimes there's quite a bit more information here. And the blue one, if I click on it, it links to the Wikidata item that the tool has decided might be a match. Okay, and you'll see I have this tool that pops out the beginning of the Wikipedia article, which is really handy for kind of a quick scan. But you can also scroll down, obviously, and look at whether there's information in this Wikidata item that confirms or refutes the match. But we don't necessarily have to click on these links because the tool is showing us some information. So it has the description from the Alexander Turnbull item saying he has a name Terry, these are his birth and death dates, and he's a rugby player for the British Lions. And then for the Wikidata item, it has this description: rugby league player, American football player, and these dates, which happen to match. Now you'll see this little blue arrow. I'm just going to click that and you'll see this is actually the description from the Wikidata item, the manual description that was entered for the English language, whereas what the tool was showing us was a constructed description. So even if the Wikidata item you're looking at doesn't have a proper description, the tool will put one together from the statements in the item, which is quite handy. But you can flick backwards and forwards because they do sometimes contain information that's different. So this one says he's Welsh, which helps for me to know that yes, he might well have been playing in the British Lions. So I'm happy that his name matches, the dates match, and the occupations match. So I'm going to confirm that. And what does that mean when we confirm a match? Well, firstly, it moves this entry from the preliminary matched category into the matched, the confirmed matches in the catalogue. But also it should have edited, I'm going to refresh this page now, the Wikidata item. So if I scroll down in the Wikidata item, I should find an Alexander Turnbull Library ID, which was not there before. You can see it was added by me. So it's added the identifier. And now we have more information in Wikidata about this guy. This is another case, Carol Bew, I don't really know how you say that, where it's useful again to flick backwards and forwards. So these are not necessarily enough information for me to know it's the same person, but if I look at the manual description on Wikidata, I can see she is the owner of the women's bookshop. And now I'm happy enough to confirm that match is real. So that's easy enough. You can scroll down through pages, picking the good matches. You could ignore the bad ones, or you can, in fact, of course, remove ones that don't work. So, for instance, Duncan Cameron, the lawyer who died in 1853, can't be the one that wrote a letter in 1890, so I can just remove that. Okay, and that immediately, you'll see, offers other options. So now that he's no longer preliminary matched to the wrong person, we can do things like search Wikidata for him or Wikipedia's. We can set a queue number if we find one, make a new item, or even say he's not notable for Wikidata if we think that's the case. All right, so let's have a look. I was working earlier on someone called Hopkins. Right, so right at the top here, we have this guy, George Hopkins, a clarinetist in the Alexander Turnbull collection. And we have George Edward Hopkins, who was a painter and died much earlier. So again, I'm going to remove this match. But let's look at these 10 options here. So what this number means is there are lots of people called George Hopkins on Wikidata. So there were other potential matches. And so I can scan these. And if I think any of them might be interesting, I can click on the blue link and go and look at the Wikidata item without accidentally matching it. And then if I decide they are a good match, if I click set queue, that's matching it within this tool and it will add the identifier on Wikidata. But I can also say, actually, none of these are a clarinetist in New Zealand. None of these are correct. Okay, and that just puts it back into the unmatched category of the tool and lets me look for other matches. So the other thing we can do, besides moving around page by page in here, we can also search a catalogue. So if I knew, for instance, that I had someone I had found somewhere else, let's say I had been looking through the online cenotaph we have in Auckland Museum, and I found this guy, Henry Ivor Hopkins, who was a reverend in Timaru. I can see maybe he'll be in the Mix and Match catalogue. So I can search for him in this catalogue. There'll be lots of Hopkins. All right, so there's lots of Hopkins in this Turnbull catalogue on Mix and Match. And let's have a look. You can see that the search tool searches all the categories. So it's finding things that have already been matched, things that are not matched, and things that are preliminary matched. Okay, which is quite useful. If you make a mistake, you know, if I matched something yesterday and today I find out actually there's 5 people I didn't know about, all with that name, and maybe I've muddled them up, this is a way of going back and finding that match and fixing it. So here's George Hopkins, our clarinetist. I don't actually have any more information about him, but maybe there's another Hopkins. Oh, that's right, Henry Ivor Hopkins. That's who we were looking for. It'll be somewhere on this page. because look, here we go. We've got an Henry Ivor Hopkins, so it's the right name, but he is also known as Harold. So, and it says he's Canon Hopkins, Anglican Minister of Temuka, prisoner of war, May 1941. Okay, so this is our guy, and I can look for him on Wikidata by clicking this. I'll just show you how that works. So it's going to automatically fill in the name for us. It's also going to add this statement, P31 equals Q5. P31 is instance of, Q5 is human. So it's only looking for items that are a human and have this text. But what if he was in Wikidata without this middle name? So you can adjust it. I have already checked, there is no correct Henry there, but maybe there's already a Harold Hopkins. So you can change the name and make sure, if I wanted to look for Henry Hopkins, who was in New Zealand, I can also add, of course, other text if I thought New Zealand had to be in the description. And in fact, we have a Harry Hopkins, who's a civil engineer, but this is not the right guy. So I'm fairly happy that my Henry Hopkins is not on Wikidata, and I can create his entry. I could, of course, do it manually, but I can create it through the tool as well. So I can create a new item. If I had found him, I could set a Q here and just paste in the Q ID from the Wikidata item. Because I didn't, I'll make a new item, and let's see what that looks like. Once you've clicked a new item, here we go, it comes up, it's got a QID, it doesn't have much of a description, but let's click on it. And now it's reasonably important, I think, to go through and add some more information, because it'll be a fairly basic item. It has this label, but we know that Henry Ivor Hopkins had another name, which was Harold. So I'm going to put in Harold Ivor Hopkins. I also think it's possible they might not always have used his middle name, so let's make him more easily findable. And now that that's in the aliases, I don't need it in the description. I am going to keep his birth and death dates up there, though, because that's always quite useful. Canon Hopkins, Anglican Minister Temuka, prisoner of war. And he's an author, which is one of the reasons I think that he's... And I've added that to the aliases. One of the reasons I think he's notable for Wikidata. I don't want to have that square bracket. Let's get rid of that. Save the description. And I can also do things like add that online cenotaph ID by copying that URL. I'll add that here. I have the script that just extracts the identifier from the URL, which is very handy. Okay, and I'm going to come back and flesh this out a bit more so that we have more information about him. But that's not really to do with mix and match. Okay. So that's how we make new items. That's how we can search. You can also just remove bad matches. So W.G. Hopkins of Masterton is not the historian of Commonwealth history. I can remove that. But that may be all I do, but that is a useful thing because it's telling the tool that isn't the right one. Okay, and I think that's enough for most users to get to grips with using mix and match. Let me know in the comments if there are questions.